1967. No, this is 66. That's the wrong one. That's 66. You want to see that? Okay. Okay, this is, Prabhupada used to chant underneath a big elm tree, but sometimes the gardeners were putting fertilizer for grass. So Prabhupada would sit down on the cement in front of the amphitheater, which is nearby. They had an amphitheater. So this kirtan was at the amphitheater down below. And that's Brahmananda there. That's Umapati holding the Chaitanya Sankirtan painting. That's Allen Ginsberg. See, that's the amphitheater, you can see. The Prabhupada's sitting right on the cement. There was a little rug. So this is the beginning of the Sankirtan movement. This is 1966, 58 years ago. That's Mr. Green. Prabhupada never called him by his spiritual name. He said Green. All Prabhupada had was a bongo drum. There were no cartels. The people would bring their own instruments. So that's just a short clip. Then, so Brahmananda would continue that while Prabhupada was in India. Prabhupada went to India. It says May 68, but that's wrong. It's May 67. And we put the painting of Lord Chaitanya up against the tree, and Brahmananda's leading the kirtan. This harmonium, you can see the keys didn't work. They just made the droning sound. That's Advaita. He was the press. He knew how to work a press. And Brahmananda is using the original bongo drum that Prabhupada used. That's Mahapurush. I forget his name. That's Jodharani. She was an artist. We had our Jagannath pendants that they sent from San Francisco. That's Rupanuga. So that's, and after chanting, Srila Prabhupada would stand up and give a small talk about the mantra in front of the tree. Oh, my throat is numb. So last week we talked about, in the last letter in September, that Brahmananda had two main services to do for Srila Prabhupada. The first was to get a residential visa. Prabhupada did not want to come back on the tourist visa because you could only extend those so long and then you'd have to leave. But Prabhupada would have to apply for himself. We couldn't do anything about that. We could give letters of introduction or letters that Prabhupada asked for, letters that from each center saying we require his presence because he's a minister of religion. So now we're on October. Oops. We're on the October letters now. Prabhupada did say that in October, he was 90% cured, and he was ready to come back to the USA. What was stopping him was the visa business. He didn't want to come on a tourist visa, and he wanted everybody's help in securing the permanent visa or residential visa. But that would have to come from others to invite Prabhupada and to give letters of recommend. That's why Prabhupada wanted Brahmananda to go and see the ambassador in Washington, because he would help. But he was transferred to Nepal. So that was the end of that. There's nothing more. He could give a letter, but I don't think he ever did. Now, Prabhupada did have some introductory letters from his godbrothers who gave letters of introduction to help with the visa. And this letter was written October 6th to Satsvarup. I may inform you in this connection that the photo offset copies of the following testimonials are lying in my apartment in New York, Prabhupada is writing. Namely, 1, the certificate from the Sri Chaitanya Math Mayapur. That was from his godbrother, Tirtha Maharaj. 2, the certificate from the Institute of Oriental Philosophy, Vrindavan. That was Ban Maharaj. 3, the certificate from Keshav Gaudiya Math Mathura. That was from his sannyas guru, Keshav Maharaj, who gave sannyas to Srila Prabhupada. And 4, the certificate from the Gaudiya Sangram Ashram, Calcutta. I'm not sure which godbrother that was. And a certificate from New York University, where Prabhupada gave a lecture. So he wanted all of these things. There was others too. We had a letter from the mayor of New York City who wrote us in 1966 that we were helping to curb the drug addiction of the hippies. It was a very good letter. And it's how I was able to sell magazines on the street with my little Krishna cart. Because I would go to Washington Square Park, any place where there were a congregation of people, and the police would immediately come and say, oh, you got to get off. And I'd show the letter from the mayor. They say, oh, okay, that's all right. And they leave me alone. So it was the first Sankirtan, really, of doing book distribution on the street. We had, because I was printing the Back to Godhead every 2 weeks, so we had a lot of Back to Godheads. I printed the essay, Who is Crazy?, which Prabhupada wrote after he met my mother, because she said we're all a bunch of crazies. So he wrote an essay, Who is Crazy? And then he wrote, I printed on the mimeograph, the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, as it is. Now, this was actually from a recording that Prabhupada made 6 months before ISKCON. Prabhupada was sitting in an office building, and over a 3-day period, he recorded the introduction to Bhagavad Gita. It's 2.5 hours long. And if you go on my Facebook, on Gregory Michael Scharf, you'll see the link where you can listen to that lecture, which is 2.5 hours long. I put it on just a few days ago, the link.
Is this the first letter to Brahmananda in October?
No, this is from someone else. I'm going to start that. First, we are giving the history about the visa, what Prabhupada wanted. So I'm giving that history. Then Prabhupada said, if it is possible to get an official or provisional appointment letter through the influence of a Mr. Ross on the strength of the above certificates, it will be easier to get the permanent visa. So it's actually a very intelligent way, the way Prabhupada got his visa. He defeated us. We hired lawyers. The way Prabhupada did it is he went to, in 1968, he went to Canada, which was a commonwealth, as well as India. And he went to Montreal, and he applied there for Montreal residential visa, which he got because it was Commonwealth. So while he was there, he presented his residential visa from Canada to the American embassy. Said, I'm a resident here, I need a residential visa for America. So they figured, well, if you got a residential visa for Canada, then then you can get a residential visa for the USA. And that's how he got it, without paying any money to the lawyers. In fact, Prabhupada wrote Brahmananda a letter, you can pay me back the $500 that you spent on lawyers to get the visa, because I got it for nothing. And that was Prabhupada using his intelligence, how to get the visa, very easily done in 68. So this is the first letter in October to Brahmananda, and it's October 4th. My dear Brahmananda, please accept my blessings. Your note, along with Ray Rama's, is in hand, and I'm so glad to read it. Yes, wait for the final decision of Macmillan and Company. I quite agree with you, because Prabhupada wanted the manuscript in India to print it right away. As I told you, Prabhupada printed 4 books in 1962 and in 63 and 65. In those 3 years, he printed 4 books. And he's been in America for 2 years and no book, only Back to Godhead. So he wanted the book publishing accomplished. But we had to go through the bureaucracy of the publishing company. Various signatures had to be taken place, up to the chairman or the president of the company. He had to sign off on it. They had to look at the manuscript to see if they wanted it in their catalog. They had to make approvals. Not that we just submitted it and then that's it. No, they had to check it out. If they take up our work, it will be very good. So let us wait for it. So you need not send the manuscript until you hear your final word from Macmillan. I am glad to learn that Kirtanananda Swami is now in New York and that he looks very nice in the midst of his glowing godbrothers. But he would have been looking more nice if he had stayed in London, because Prabhupada sent him to London for a few days as it was settled here. Anyway, I shall be very glad if Kirtanananda goes with Ray Rama to London and opens a branch there cooperatively. He has got an introductory letter for a London lady. Her name is Miss Botwell. She was the sponsor for the Gaudiya Math in the 1930s. So she was an elderly lady. Immediately correspondence may be opened with her. Regarding Ambassador Nehru, I am especially interested in him because he wanted to help me in getting my permanent visa. Please try to utilize him in some way or other to get this visa. Otherwise, I am quite fit to return to your place. So Prabhupada was ready to return, but he wanted that visa, the proper visa. I am always anxious to be with you for the remaining days of my life, preaching Krishna consciousness in the Western world. So Prabhupada wanted to really stay with us. He wanted to come back. Although Kirtanananda was telling us Prabhupada wasn't coming back and he was the boss. We had to listen to him. And he was chanting Om Shivaya Namaha instead of Hare Krishna. We went to a function on the west side of the village, and that's where he started chanting Om Shivaya Namaha. So we were all confused. Prabhupada was writing us, he was coming, and Kirtanananda was saying, no, he's not coming. You have to listen to me because I'm the sannyasi. So what to do? I think you have my, this time I shall go with the determination for my mission in the Western world and try to get me a permanent visa or immigration papers, whichever is easiest. I think you have my certificates in my apartment, which I just read to you from Satsaru. And you can utilize them. Two very important things are resting with you. The first arrangement with Macmillan, and second, to get my permanent visa. So these are the two services that Brahmananda had to do. Most important, the publishing and the visa. You are very sincere, and Krishna will certainly help you in this attempt. I have duly received the bank receipt along with the letter. The pictures that you ordered from Brijbasi and Sons have been sent to San Francisco by mistake. Write Mukunda that you may get them back. He has received 3,000 pictures from them by air. Now, they did receive them. They were beautiful pictures that Prabhupada ordered of Krishna, full posters, big posters, not small ones, thick paper, printed very nice. There was the Visvarupa, there was Gopal with the cow, stroking the cow. There was so many nice posters. Now they got those posters, but they didn't do anything with them except take them and maybe sell them or just take some of them. When I got there in October or November of '67, I told them, you have to pay for those posters because the New York Temple, I paid for those, $125. So they're mine. So I took hold of them and I distributed them in all the head shops. You know, in those days, there were the psychedelic posters all over the place. And there was 4 or 5 poster shops. And I sold them like anything. I mean, people just bought them right up. And I was able to make a good profit for the New York Temple and send them the money. So at this time, October 4th, Prabhupada wrote to Ray Rama also on that day. And he says to Ray Rama, when I receive letters from you and Brahmananda, immediately I feel new energy. You see, I thank you very much as Mr. Coleman for improving our Back to Godhead. The Back to Godhead was being printed by me on mimeograph machines at that time. But they weren't so attractive, and to print by hand on a mimeograph is not so clear. The ink gets too heavy or gets too light. And it's very dirty. Your hands are always dirty. It's not a good way of printing a magazine that you want to be attractive. So they started to print on offset printing, which is quite a bit more expensive. That's why I went out to San Francisco, because my service was finished. Although I was the treasurer accountant, the first treasurer accountant of ISKCON, I wanted to go to San Francisco to greet Srila Prabhupada when he came back, because he was coming back from Calcutta. He's in Calcutta now. So I'm very happy that since it is entrusted to you, the things are improving. Ray Rama was in charge of the Back to Godhead. He was the editor, everything. This means that Krishna is giving you more and more facilities. Krishna is such a nice boss that he gives more facilities and improvement to the sincere servant. From the very beginning of your meeting with me, you have very sincerely and honestly carried out my orders, and I'm so much obliged to you for your simple and plain behavior. Ray Rama, I used to call him Jesus, because if you see in the film Matchless Gifts, he had long brown hair and a very pleasant look about him with blue eyes, and he looked like Jesus. So I gave him the nickname Jesus. And Prabhupada also says the same thing, that he had, and he was very good in the philosophy. He used to give the classes, the morning and the evening classes. Others did also, but he gave the best classes because he also was editing the Bhagavad Gita as it is. So he knew the philosophy from his editing work, from doing Back to Godhead and Bhagavad Gita. Both Hari Griva and Ray Rama were both editing the Bhagavad Gita. So at this time, also on October 3rd, Prabhupada wrote a letter to Nandarani, Krishna Devi, Subal, and Uddhava. Please accept my blessings. I'm very glad to know that you are now in Los Angeles and organizing the most important temple. So even though Prabhupada wasn't present, new temples were opening. And this one was in Los Angeles. When Prabhupada left, there were only 3 centers: New York, San Francisco, and Montreal. And when he came back, there were 3 more. There was Los Angeles, Santa Fe, and Boston. I had a great desire to have our center in LA, and by the grace of Krishna, you have fulfilled my desire. Why? Because the weather was like Delhi. It was dry, warm, and they had a rainy season. The sun was always out. When I was in LA in 70, it only rained during the winter time. Otherwise, it was all sun every day. That's why I opened the Spiritual Sky incense there, because I made the incense outside, and it was dried by the sun. And the whole neighborhood smelled of strawberry fields, or cherry, or orange.
Cherry blossom.
Yeah, cherry blossom.
Did you make up all those names?
Yeah.
We used to do the state fairs, and we would leave with the incense, and everyone was so intoxicated with the smell that they would easily take a book.
Yeah. That's how it was on Sankirtan when we did the magazines.
Yeah.
They didn't look at the magazine. They looked at the incense.
And we had the oils, too.
Yeah, we had the oils.
They made a big mess in the bag.
Yeah, I know.
The tops didn't fit on tightly.
No, but then I got spill-proof bottles, and that solved the problem. But they were more expensive.
But all our Sankirtan bags smelled really good.
Yeah. Everyone smelled good.
Yeah, we smelled good.
Yeah. So he talks about the same things. So in October 3rd, Prabhupada writes to Satsvarupa, who's in Boston now, opening the center in Boston. So he says, Kirtanananda, while returning to New York, he was to stop there and see in London, but he was so much frenzied. I like that word. He was so much frenzied to see and meet his old friends in New York that he forgot the order of Krishna and indulged in a sort of sense gratification. Just see. I mean, this is the first time that Prabhupada ever had to discipline a disciple. He never had to do that. This is the very first time in ISKCON history, 1967, very, very early. He never had to chastise. It is certainly a shocking incident, which I never expected from a disciple like Kirtanananda, because Kirtanananda was Prabhupada's first personal servant. He was the first one to shave his head and wear a dhoti. In those days, we wore yellow dhotis because you couldn't get saffron. There was no saffron in the market in New York. So, and on October 3rd, he also wrote to Satsarup, and he says, regarding my return, I may inform you I am now 90% cured, and I can immediately return, but I want to return with a permanent visa. Please therefore consult Mukunda and Brahmananda and company and do all the necessary action. But of course, I explained to you how he got the visa.
Is it Srila Prabhupada now?
Hmm?
Srila Prabhupada is alone now?
No, he's with Achyutananda and another devotee from San Francisco. What was his name? I forgot his name. He didn't lie, he blooped in India. Ramanuja was his name. So that's the first letter, and the other letters. Oh, then Prabhupada writes to Mukunda on October 7th. The record player which you gave me at Stinson Beach is lost. When Prabhupada went to India, he brought a portable record player, and he played the record, the Krishna consciousness record. If you want to know what that looks like, you go to Prabhupada's museum, and Brahmananda put a copy there. It's in the one of the cabinets. It is stolen by somebody from my room while I was alone sleeping. Just see India. Even from Prabhupada, they would sneak in and steal from his room. I can take some police action, but I do not wish to implicate myself in such a way because I'm going to Calcutta. Also, it doesn't look good for a devotee to get involved in legal. That's our business. We should go to the police. So the next letter to Brahmananda was on October 11th.
Says 1. Is that wrong? This says October 1.
No, it says 10/11/67.
Oh, okay. Above that.
Well, maybe it's a typo.
Yeah.
We read October 2nd already.
Yeah.
So this is October 11th. There are many typos because when they type them to put them in the database, they made many typos. My dear Brahmananda, please accept my blessings. On my arrival in Calcutta, I have duly received your 2 letters dated blank and the 5th instant. So Brahmananda sent 2 letters to Prabhupada in that time frame. Regarding the change of dress, I beg to inform you that every Krishna conscious person must be clean shaved, must have tilak on the forehead and other 11 places, and must have sika on the top of the head, besides beads on the neck as usual. Rarely one can continue to keep beard, but it is better not to keep it, to keep it distinguish oneself from the hippies. We must let the public know that we are not hippies. Do not try to follow the unauthorized advice of Kirtanananda. So he was disturbing everybody. Nobody cares for the dress. Actually, only 2 people in those days had shaved head. One was Brahmananda and Kirtananda. They were the only ones that had shaved head. Nobody cares for the dress. Every sane man follows the philosophy and practical talks. Let Kirtananda Swami do something practical. Let him do whatever he likes, and let us see that thousands of Americans are following him. He was in competition with Prabhupada. He wanted to do his own movement, you see. On the personal level, I spoke to his sister during that time, and he was abused by his father because he had polio. His father was a fire and brimstone preacher, Christian preacher, very heavy. And he used to call his little son with polio, "You little runt, you're never going to grow up and be anything." So the whole thing was against his father. He wanted to prove to his father that he could have his own movement. So he was actually in competition with Prabhupada. And that later came out to be true when New Vrindavan did change and become a Christian pseudo-Hindu movement. They were wearing Benedictine robes, and they weren't chanting Hare Krishna, but they were saying, "Oh Lord, please engage me in your service." That was their mantra, not Hare Krishna. So the whole thing, we went there in 1991 to liberate New Vrindavan, me and Brahmananda, because they didn't have any books. They were banned from having books from BBT. So we filled up our car with books, and we brought them to New Vrindavan.
Why did BBT ban them?
Because they had their own movement. And Kirtanananda didn't have the Bhagavad Gita. He had Christ and Krishna was his book. That we placed the Bhagavad Gita. So at first they banned us, they locked us in our door, in our room, and they wouldn't allow us any contact with devotees because they had their own philosophy and they didn't want to disturb. But Brahmananda had a personal relationship with Kirtanananda, and at that time Kirtanananda was under house arrest, wearing an ankle bracelet, electronic. He was under federal case. So Brahmananda went to see Kirtanananda. And Kirtanananda used to give sermons in New Vrindavan over the telephone, and they would have loudspeakers all over Vrindavan where one could hear his sermons. They called them sermons because that's the Christian word. So one day, so Brahmananda came back and he said, "We'll be able to sell the books." And it came over the intercom, the speaker system, where Kirtanananda said, "I hereby give you permission to purchase Srila Prabhupada's books. They're as good as mine." That's what he said. So we spent a month there. We sold $40,000 worth of BBT books there. Everybody was buying Prabhupada's books because they hadn't access to them. And the kirtans were very strange, but we had to keep our mouths shut. There was no Sanskrit, it was all English. Instead of mridanga, kartal, or harmonium, there was an orchestra, a Western-style orchestra doing the music. And there were pews, like a church. You had to sit on a pew, and there was no dancing. You could circumambulate only. And Christ deity was next to Prabhupada. They had a Christ deity next to Prabhupada. So we had to keep our mouths shut. We were angry that Kirtanananda had changed everything in Prabhupada's movement. No, that was Kirtananda, but also they pictured Prabhupada with a crown as if he was a king, a material king. But Kirtananda wore a crown and he had a staff and 2 Doberman pinchers for protection. And they were allowed into the temple. Anyway, everything was crazy in those days.
They were allowed in the temple. I heard
Yeah.
they were kept outside.
Well, they told us they were allowed because Kirtanananda was afraid that ISKCON would come and attack him. So he always kept those dogs by his side. They were trained, specially trained.
Yeah, and they can be vicious.
Oh yeah, Dobermans, yeah.
They're like police dogs.
Anyway, that was another age.
Yeah.
We're still in 67.
Yeah.
The pure days.
What year was this?
1991 we were there. But we stayed a month, and the prasadam was a microbiotic diet. Brown rice and boiled vegetables, no spices, you know.
Many people were there.
Yeah. He had about 600 people living there in 1991. They had a health food store. I mean, they had everything there. It was a big community. I think all of you, except a sannyasi, may dress yourself just like a fine, up-to-date American gentleman. But one must have the tilak, etc., as I have mentioned above. Kirtanananda is the first man in our society who cleanly shaved and kept the sika. He was the first, on top of the head. Now he has begun to keep beard again. This is not good. Whatever he is doing nowadays has no sanction from me, and he has deliberately disobeyed me by not going to London. Now he appears to be out of my control, and therefore I advise you not to follow his principles unless he shows practically something wonderful. I gave him a chance to do this in the matter of opening a branch in London, but he has failed to do it. Now let him show, first of all, that by seeing his newly grown beard, he has become successful to have many Americans following him, and our financial condition has improved. Then try to follow his instruction. Otherwise, reject all idle talks. This was very difficult for Prabhupada because he's so far away. And there's someone preaching against every single teaching that Prabhupada gave us. Kirtanananda was saying everything against Prabhupada. He wasn't speaking against Prabhupada, but he was speaking against everything that Prabhupada said. And this was very confusing to us, especially when Prabhupada was saying he's coming back, but Kirtanananda is saying he's not coming back. Anyway, to finish the Kirtanananda business, they eventually went and left. Kirtanananda and Harigriva left and started their own movement called New Vrindavan. A lot of people think Prabhupada started New Vrindavan, but actually it wasn't started by them. It was started by Kirtanananda and Harigriva. Me and Brahmananda were the first ones to drive Srila Prabhupada to New Vrindavan in 1969. That was the first time Prabhupada went there, when they had no electricity. Prabhupada didn't like it because he couldn't do his dictaphone. But he stayed for the weekend. I remember because we rented a Volkswagen. It was $60 for the weekend. And me and Brahmananda took Prabhupada, and Rupanuga came in his Volkswagen bus. And we stayed the week. It was the first time I had pure cow's milk. I'd never tasted pure. It had a cow taste. It's different from the milk you buy in the market. This milk tasted like a cow. And it was so thick, you couldn't digest it. You had to drink it very slowly. It was so thick with cream.
What year did Kirtanananda Maharaj and Harigriva leave?
They left in 67,
67.
after Prabhupada practically disowned them, you know. So they left on their own. They couldn't get any followers. They thought they would get followers from Prabhupada in New York, but nobody would listen to them or follow them, even though they were chanting Om Shivaya Namaha. I am writing separately to Harigriva about the manuscript of Gita Upanishad. For typing, Satsarupa is always ready, and therefore there is no need of employing a paid man. Regarding other problems, depend on Krishna and try to find out a suitable place if Mr. Chudy has a tendency to exploit us. He was the superintendent of the building. He always wanted to raise the rent. I think Kirtanananda I don't want to talk about him anymore.
Yeah. Moving on.
I am prepared to sit down underneath a tree with one sincere soul, and in such activity I shall be free from all diseases. Just see, Prabhupada's giving how he be free from all disease. Just sitting and preaching Krishna consciousness. I mean, just think what Prabhupada is thinking, that this man, his own disciple, is preaching against everything he's talking about, and he's 10,000 miles away, and he's trying to talk to us to not listen to him. What is he thinking in his mind? What is Prabhupada thinking about what's going on? Is he going to lose his whole movement to this one person? I mean, this was a very difficult time for Prabhupada, not only for Prabhupada, but for us especially, because we were all confused. We were new devotees. Most of us had only 2 or 3 months association, because Prabhupada started in July of '66, and then he went to San Francisco in January, and then he stayed 3 months there. Then he had his heart attack, and then he went to India for 6 months. So how many months did we have association? Not very much. So we were in great turmoil in our brains. And Prabhupada had to keep preaching and encouraging us through letters.
You said Prabhupada heart attack in San Francisco.
No. Actually, he had many heart attacks, he says. But he had the stroke in New York. But he went to San Francisco to try and get better. But actually, he got worse. I know you are very much anxious to see me in good health, and by the grace of Krishna, I am getting well day by day. The only thing is, this time I wish to return on permanent visa or immigration visa. Before I go, I wish to begin the printing of Gita Upanishad. So this thing about Kirtanananda wasn't really affecting Prabhupada, because what he was thinking about was his visa, so he could stay with us in America for as long as he wanted, and for printing books. That's what he was really thinking about. Anyway, this is more about Kirtanananda. I don't. So Jyotirani at this time, October 13th, what's that?
I was just saying that Prabhupada apparently was really disturbed.
He was disturbed, but he was thinking about going forward,
Yeah,
not backward.
what's done is done.
Right.
Yeah.
I published that
Yeah.
in 10 parts.
Okay.
There's a lot of quotes on that.
Yeah. That's in our 108.
Yeah.
Perfect English.
It took me 3 days to go through the database to find it. What's done is done. Whenever something happened with a devotee fall down or something went bad, Prabhupada didn't want to hear about it. He would say, what's done is done. Now go forward. Never go backward. What's done is done. That was his favorite phrase that he used. So we should also say that if something goes wrong, just forget about it. What's done is done. Now go forward.
Learn the lesson.
Yes. Everything can be learned in Krishna consciousness, especially with our own selves. So at that time, he wrote a letter to Jyotirani, which is very interesting. And he says to Jyotirani, you have written to say that I am as hard as a thunderbolt and softer than a rose. Prabhupada, you should put that in your book. Mahadevi.
Yeah.
I am hard as a thunderbolt and softer than a rose, is quite right in the line of Krishna consciousness. I am very sorry to inform you that Kirtanananda is playing the part of a foolish man after his return to New York. It is necessary for me to play the part of a thunderbolt for his nonsense activities. He has unnecessarily instructed something to Damodar which is not sanctioned to me. See, he was going around to everybody. Actually, I did something very bad because I got very emotional because he kept saying Prabhupada's not coming, and Prabhupada said he is coming. You know, it took time for the mail to come from India, sometimes a week, to 10 days. So when he said that Prabhupada, I spit in his face. And it got to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said I shouldn't have done that. But I would have done it again and again because he was saying such nonsense things. And I was so much opposed to what he was saying, and especially that he wasn't ever coming back. That meant a lot to me,
And the other devotees.
Yeah, especially. He was preaching to Damodar something, he was preaching to everybody something else, his own philosophy, which is not sanctioned by, since he has developed this nonsensical attitude, so much so that he is dictating something which is not sanctioned by me, all his instructions should be neglected. This is the one teaching Prabhupada saying, don't listen to him. Please inform this to all centers. Because Prabhupada was thinking he was going to go to all centers and preach this nonsense and steal the whole movement away. For some reason, Kirtanananda had some charisma. People would listen to him and want to follow him. That's how he started the new Vrindavan. And he was trying to do this now. Later on, he did it when Prabhupada left the planet. But that's why he went to New Vrindavan. He was writing letters to everybody. And Prabhupada had to write a letter to all centers not to go to New Vrindavan until he went. Because when nobody came, they came back to Prabhupada. And they invited him to come to New Vrindavan. And Prabhupada, being so merciful, he did go. It's amazing. But this person was trying to undermine Prabhupada, and Prabhupada didn't have any ill feelings against him at all. He made him a god in Vrindavan, practically. So this shows the pure devotee has no personal enmity against anybody, even though you do so many things against him. Uh-oh. So the next letter came to Brahmananda just a few days later on October 14th. My dear Brahmananda, please accept my blessings. I thank you very much for sending me 2 copies of BTG stationery and envelopes. I have received a letter from Damodar dated the 9th, which he writes to say, well, it's about Kirtanananda. We don't have to say. This is much disturbing to me and caused me much pain. So Prabhupada was really painful for this, but still he was thinking that the movement would go forward because he knew he had some sincere disciples in place. He had Brahmananda, he had Ray Rama, he had Mukunda, all the San Francisco devotees, and myself was there, still the treasurer of ISKCON and the printer of Back to Godhead.
Did Prabhupada write him directly?
Who?
Kirtanananda.
Yeah, he did. Please therefore stop Kirtanananda from making his mental concoctions. Do not be misled. See, in every letter, Prabhupada had to say these things. He has become crazy.
He's giving this, you're saying, please stop him, so he's giving that responsibility to Brahmananda.
Well, he told also Jodharani to tell all centers not to listen to. He gave more of instruction to Jodharani that all centers should not listen to him. Because Prabhupada was afraid he would go to San Francisco, go to Boston, and preach all this nonsense.
But Brahmananda is the temple president, so that really fell under
Yeah,
him.
for that area.
Yeah.
But he told Jodharani, who's a woman, to tell all the centers. He told her that she should tell all the centers. He didn't tell Brahmananda. That's why I like to read the whole history of ISKCON, not just what Brahmananda is written to, not just what is written to Brahmananda. Because we have to know the complete picture. I've written to you to inform you somehow or other he has become crazy. Otherwise, he would not have disobeyed me to go to New York. For the time being, he has cut all link with me. That's a heavy offense. And yet Prabhupada accepts him back later on. Just see. I mean, I can't think how it's possible. Because he did so many bad things. No, I think no one in the whole movement did so many bad things because he was preaching against Prabhupada to everybody and giving different instructions. And yet Prabhupada accepts him back as a surrendered soul. Just see the pure devotee. For the time being, therefore, any instruction given by him is unauthorized and should be at once rejected. He has no right to dictate, as he is without my sanction. He is too much puffed up nonsensically. Therefore, you should copy this letter and forward to all centers. Okay, he's telling Brahmananda to copy this letter and send it to all centers. That's how Prabhupada was thinking that Kirtanananda would pollute all the centers. I'm very sorry that he is exploiting his present position as a sannyasi. I have no objection if members of the society dress like American gentlemen, but in all circumstances, a devotee cannot avoid tilak and beads and neck, and flag on head. These are essential features of Vaishnava. Hope you are well. Prabhupada wrote that from Calcutta on the 14th. And the next letter came 2 days later, on the 16th of October. Brahmananda got 4 or 5 letters in October. Nobody's gotten. The total amount of letters for 67 was 45. That's an average of 4 letters a month. Some even more. Some were 3 letters, some were 5 letters. Nobody got that much letters.
It took about 2 days.
Not from Calcutta.
So from Calcutta it would take, no, I mean in America, from San Francisco to New York.
Yeah, from San Francisco to New York.
So then it, from
2-3
Calcutta-
days.
from Calcutta-
Well, if it was the aerogram, it would go by air. And most of the letters we got were those fold-up aerograms. You know.
You have
That,
them?
yeah, I showed them to you.
Yeah, but you still have them?
No, I made some arrangement.
Yeah. So how many days would the aerogram take? Like
Well,
4 days?
I'm due receipt of your letter on the 6th, on the 10th.
Oh,
So that means 6 days. 6 days it took, the aerogram. That's a long time.
yeah.
Especially if you look at nowadays, we do email, We do everything. So we had to wait in anxiety what Prabhupada would say. When we wrote on what Kirtanananda is doing, this. We'd have to wait 6 days or 7 days.
And Prabhupada also had to wait.
Yeah.
For get different, not just about Kirtanananda, but all kinds of things.
So many.
Yeah.
So this came on the 16th. This is the last letter I can read for today. I am due receipt of your letter dated the 10th. I've also received Kirtananda's letter from different centers of our society. The news of the activities of Kirtananda is giving me too much pain. No one in the whole movement gave so much pain to Prabhupada. Nobody. There is one person, the government of India, in 1977, where they accused Prabhupada because we had Mayapur and we were using the land for food distribution and not for farming. And they said, you are under penalty because we're feeding the poor. We're under penalty because we're not using it for farming, but for feeding the poor. We were feeding thousands of people a prasadam every day in Mayapur. And Prabhupada was so fed up, this nonsense government, he said, he wrote in a letter, I don't want ever to return to India again. I shall die in London with my devotees. That's what he said. It's from August, I still remember, August 1977. He wrote that. So that really hurt Prabhupada. It was the government of India. Calling him a CIA agent? Ridiculous, nonsense things they were saying in the parliament. That Prabhupada was the CIA, receiving money from CIA. Just see. Prabhupada had the most negative preaching, not in America. We had some, but in India. India was the worst. It drained Prabhupada. What happened in Juhu when they came to break the deities just drained Prabhupada of all his energy. He admitted that his life energy was drained from the Juhu. When we got the land, the man tried to cheat us. Then they tried to get us off the land because he sold it to 10 other people. I mean, you don't know what Prabhupada went through at Juhu. That's another story I can tell you. I got tons of stories.
That's why we're here.
From Ray Rama's letter, is it clear that Kirtanananda has not rightly understood Krishna conscious philosophy? Anyway, I want to skip. It is clear that he has become crazy and he should once more be sent to Bellevue. Bellevue Hospital in New York was a mental hospital. And in the beginning, maybe in July or August of '66, Kirtanananda wanted to get money for Prabhupada. So in America, you could get money from the government if you were considered crazy, but not crazy enough to be. So you could get money. And so he thought, I'll go and act crazy, and then they'll give me money. They'll approve money for me. But when they examined him at Bellevue, they said, you are crazy and you are a danger to the society. And they committed him to Bellevue because you are crazy. You're not acting crazy and you're dangerous to society. And they put him in the hospital. He couldn't get out. Once you're committed by the state, that's it. You're gone. You're gone. If you were committed by a parent, they could get you out, but he was committed by the state. So it took Allen Ginsberg and a few other influential, there was a House of Representatives from Harlem. He helped us also. I forget his name. He was good. So he got Kirtanananda out after a few weeks. But Prabhupada recommended that he should go back to Bellevue Just see. At least he should be stopped from speaking such nonsense. And anyway, that letter ends. Then Prabhupada writes to Pradyumna on the same day, on the 17th of October. We asked how to celebrate Ramchandra. So Ramchandra's victory celebration is observed in the last day of Durga Puja. Vaishnavas are not concerned with Durga Puja, except in Bangladesh. That's why the temple got attacked, because they disobeyed Prabhupada's order. So the temple was attacked by the Muslims. Vaishnavas are not concerned with Durga Puja. Diwali is observed as New Year's Day by certain mercantile community. The Vaishnavas have nothing to do with this ceremony. But just on the last day after Diwali, the Vaishnavas observe the Annakuta ceremony. That's the Govardhan Puja. We don't observe Diwali, we do Govardhan Puja. This celebration is the day when Lord Krishna lifted the hill and Madhavinda Puri established the temple of Gopala. We don't celebrate that on that day, I think. We just do Govardhan Puja. We don't celebrate Madhavinda Puri. So that was written at the same time. Then Prabhupada writes me at the same time. Well, it's very long, and now it's 12 o'clock. Next time. Next. Finish it? It was written at the same time as Brahmananda's. We'll read it next time, because it's 12 o'clock. If there's any questions, I'll take questions. Yes, sir.
You said Rai Rama Prabhu used to give very nice classes.
Yes.
Are they available?
No, we never recorded them. We only recorded Prabhupada. We never recorded the lectures.
It's just, it seems Prabhupada never rejected Kirtanananda.
No. He was just chastising him. But he never took it personally as a personal attack. Although it was a personal attack from his side, because he was saying everything against Prabhupada. I got cookies here. Don't go away. There's Prashadam by Nagapati. This Mataji brought.
Thank you.
Nagapati Prabhu.
It's a very wonderful.
I hope you're getting good history.
Oh, it's marvelous.
Oh, good.
We're loving it. Forward to it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Hare
Coming
Krishna.
here from Govardhan Hill every Sunday.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
long trip,
We don't want to miss your talks.
but it's so long.
The
It's
detail is
worthwhile.
the
Okay.
detail. The details.
Yeah,
very
I
grateful.
remember.
Cheers, service.
Okay, thank you very much. Come get prashadam. If you have questions, I'll answer while I give out prashadam. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. I'll give you two.
Save some for your wife. No, one's good.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Give one. What about you? Oh,
I'll take anyway. But this is my cookie, this is my cake.
okay, very good.
Just come and talk.
It's your nectar.
And this is mine.
Oh, okay.
Can you drink some?
Yeah, I do. I'll
Is
drink more.
that water? Prabhupada was just saying this morning, what's the difficulty in remembering Krishna? Krishna says, I am the taste of water, so when we drink water, we can remember Krishna. Great.
I'll save some. She had to go to the hospital yesterday.
Oh, why?
She's getting old. In her family, they die very early, like 60, and she's near 60. Her brother died, he was only 55. Her mother died, she was only in her 60s. The father died when she was a little girl. She can't read and write. She's illiterate. And so she's had a tough life. She was our cook, and Brahmananda loved her cooking. Bengali, she used the stone to make spices. And Brahmananda, when her husband died, Brahmananda said, we can't lose her. I'm attached to her cooking. He said, you marry her. I go, what? I didn't come to Vrindavan to get married. So I had someone do an intermarry between me because I put some conditions, no physical contact. So that was agreeable. Because she has grandchildren, she has children. Yeah, she speaks English. Because she worked for a lot of people for like 50. She's been in Vrindavan for 30 years. And she worked for a lot of devotees. So she learned enough English to get by. I mean, we don't have conversations, but we have enough. We've been married 20 years, so.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Love it.
And you don't have to worry about your visa when you married her, so that was a
Yeah.
real
Well,
positive.
now I do.
Yeah, no, I think it's.
No, but I haven't gotten it in
I
my
know,
own.
but it's coming, it's just paperwork,
Oh,
yeah, I told you that.
you said the boy was going
Huh?
to ask.
He went and it's been done, but now it's paperwork.
Oh,
You're not the
okay.
only one in India who has applied for that. Look at how beautiful they look out in there. There's Govinda's garland.
But if she dies, then it's finished.
Yeah, you have to reapply.
You do?
They changed the rules.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's
That's
what
why
happened with
Deva Shakti had a problem.
Yeah.
Her husband died. Anyway.
Plus she knows the cook.
Well, I don't eat too much cooked food anymore. My main meal for protein is Masuri dal pasta. Very high in protein and no carbohydrate. So good for diabetes.